Okay, everybody, before we get into the actual video, I think I need to bring to your attention the hip new trendy thing that is gonna take the world by storm. Y'all laughed at me! Y'all laughed at me! But who's laughing now, huh? Check this out. Uh-huh, that's right. Adhesive foam paw pads that you could stick to your palms so that you could be cute and adorable just like Kuma. Oh god, am I a furry? I didn't even think that when I was attaching these to myself. Like, is hashtag I'm not a furry even accurate anymore? I don't know, man, but you gotta give me this much. They are totes adorable. Okay, so today's video is going to be about Kuma's devil fruit, the Niku no Mi, or the Paw Paw fruit. It's a little bit unusual, I gotta give you that much, Oda. It kind of falls in the same line as a devil fruit whose name does not necessarily denote what power it's going to have. Like, for example, Crocodile Suna no Mi has the ability to control sand, so yeah, he can manipulate sand itself, but he can also drain the moisture out of people and things. Makes sense. Sand is something very dry that can absorb the moisture out of things. Okay, makes sense there. Buggy's chop fruit. Okay, once again, you know, it all clicks there. He can separate his body. He can chop himself apart. But then you get to ones like we talked about last week with Perona's hollow fruit, which doesn't immediately imply that she can control a bunch of ghosts to her will. And when it comes to Kuma's Pawpaw fruit, yeah, it is accurate in the sense that it does give him paw pads, but the ability to reject pretty much any attack that the paw pads come in contact with, and the ability to send things flying off literally to the other side of the planet if he desires so. Yeah, you're probably not going to imply those kind of abilities just from the name alone, unless there's some Japanese myth somewhere about how a magical kitten was able to touch something and send it flying hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Gotta be honest with you, I would read that myth, but I haven't stumbled upon it as of yet, and that's kind of my thing, so I'm just gonna assume that Oda just made this up on the spot, which, once again, I'm fine with. Okay, so, strictly speaking, Kuma's paw pads are basically his invincible points. It doesn't matter what kind of attack hits him, as long as it comes in contact with the paw pads, it's not gonna do any damage. Rather, he can redirect the damage somewhere else, or back at the opponent, or he can just knock it away. As I said, he can send things flying hundreds, thousands of miles to the other side of the planet if he really desired so. Kuma could probably send something flying to the moon if he really wanted to. How about that for a tie-in, right? Eneru's up there working in his electronic, automata kingdom, rebuilding the Maxim, weaponizing that damn thing, and he's like, soon my attack will commence on the blue sea, and I, God Eneru, will take over, and then just like a rock conks him in the head, just, dang it! He gets knocked down. He didn't see it coming. He was too busy monologuing, and then that's how Eneru gets taken down. Kuma is just, nonchalantly throwing rubble away on the earth. But yeah, when it comes to physical attacks, it doesn't matter if it's a bullet, or a blade, or fire, or electricity, or a laser beam. Even if you were to drop, 10-ton building on him. You were literally just gonna take a giant piece of rock or a mountain or something and just try to squash the dude. It really doesn't matter. All Kuma has to do is just hold his hand up. The second that thing touches his paw pad, it's gonna get flung off in some random direction, or back at you. When, Zoro was fighting him and he used his swords, the blades came in contact with the paws, it made it look like he was gonna cut right through Kuma's hand for a second, but no, it just, this tremendous, opposite force, magnetism, essentially. The second Zoro's swords came in contact, it just repelled him back with such, force that he got flung to the other side of the battlefield. Even something like fire, you might think oh, well, fire would certainly torch him, so there seems to be maybe even a little bit of an area of effect around him, because when Usopp fired off his Firebird star, I mean, the Firebird star, it really is just a pellet that he, flings with his Kabuto, but the thing literally explodes into a fiery bird. Right? And even just one part of that came in contact with the paw pads got sent back exactly opposite, you know, like right back at Usopp. It was actually kind of a funny scene because Kuma was basically just like berating all of the Straw Hats, you know, just smack talking them in the most effective way that Kuma could smack talk, because Kuma's kind of a monotone, stoic sort of bear dude. So he's just like, ah, you're the king of the snipers, I see. And then he just like pops it right back at Usopp, and he's like, that's a title you clearly gave yourself. Oh, sick burn, Kuma! Sick burn! My paw pads are slowly falling off. I didn't account for palm sweat when I designed this. But don't worry. We'll figure out a new method with this. You know what we gotta get on this? Japanese teen girls. Because, as we all know, every trendy thing that's ever existed in the world started with Japanese teen girls, okay? So if they get on this, I think we'll be set. But anyway, yeah, that's essentially, you know, in combat, how you can use the fruit. And also another way is essentially you gotta get out of fight free card whenever you want, because Kuma is capable of flinging himself as well. So if Kuma's in the middle of a battle and he's just like, oh, screw this, or if it's just like, I'm not in the mood for this, I'm kind of hungry, I think I'm gonna swing by McDonald's and grab like a Big Mac or something, all Kuma really has to do is just poink and then just bounce him away. He can choose exactly where people get sent to. It's not even like it's a random designation or he has to calculate it out in his head. Like, I am going to send you exactly 372 kilometers in a northwest position. Boop. No, it's like, I'm sending Luffy to Amazon Lily. Pop, I'm sending Zoro to Muggy Island. Boop, I'm sending Nami to a Sky Island. Boop. You know, I highly doubt that Kuma, granted, he is a robo at this point. He does have robotic parts, so it might be like he has a, like, Vegapunk installed a global positioning system inside of him. Actually, that would make a lot of sense. Because if he had that, then in conjunction with the Devil Fruit, he would be able to send people away. It would be able to send people away to a very specific location, whereas normally he would have to, like, know how far and, like, what degree, what angle are you going to send them away at, something along those lines. But yeah, if he does have some sort of, like, GPS feature in his robotic head, that would augment his ability even more. But, yeah, so on top of sending people flying, including himself, you know, to basically get out of any battle there, he can also reject non-tangible things, such as pain or fatigue. So he did this with Luffy. Luffy had this big epic battle with Moria and Oars. I was gonna say Oz for a second. The first translated versions of One Piece that I ever read, of the Thriller Bark arc, you know, romanticized Oars' name as Oz. And I thought that was really cool. I don't know, just because, you know, O-Z, you know, he's a big guy, 2 letters, that's all you need. But, no, it is in fact Oars, but I kind of like Oz, too. But anyway, yeah, after this big epic brawl, Luffy is just, he's a little tuckered out. He's, like, basically unconscious, he's in a low-grade coma, just like, nightmare Luffy, meat. So, Kuma picks him up and then just presses his paw pad right up against Luffy's skin, and this giant red bubble appears. All of the bubbles that Kuma makes from his shockwaves all take the appearance of a paw pad. Kuma himself is modeled after a bear. You know, of course, bears have paw pads, so do, like, dogs and cats, which is the funny scene with Robin. Whenever she first learned of the power, she imagined cute kittens. Now, Luffy is still unconscious, okay? It's actually not expressly stated if he can heal, like, physical wounds through this, because you'd figure, I mean, you know, Oda doesn't go too much into detail of all, like, the bloody wounds that you have all over characters. Like, that happened with Zoro when he fought Mihawk. He got pretty cut up there, so I'm curious, like, after Zoro got freaking sliced by Mihawk and blood was gushing everywhere, could Kuma, like, touch him? And then, like, would the wound close up, or would it just heal, like, naturally, or would the wound not close up at all? All that would really happen was that all the immediate pain and suffering would be ejected from him, but more of it would come back. I don't exactly know how it works. When Luffy fought against Moria, I think it was more apparent that he had, you know, he didn't get, like, serious injuries from that fight. It wasn't like Luffy had a giant gash on his chest or something. That waited until Akainu. But, you know, it's just going into Nightmare Luffy, and then Gear Second, Gear Third, Gear Second, Gear Third, back and forth. It was just very exhausting to the point where he basically got knocked into a coma, and so something like that, Kuma would be able to heal very easily. So he ejects all of it, and then Zoro has the best moment in all of anime, where he jumps in and receives all of Luffy's suffering, and then after that was over, he's literally just standing in a pile of his own blood, where he's just like, his eyes are all bloodshot, and he's like, yeah, I tanked that, bro. Got any booze? You know, so that was a pretty cool thing. It's also implied in the video games, and I would assume he could do this. If Kuma can send himself flying using his own devil fruit, I don't see any reason why he couldn't do this. Rejecting his own pain as well. So if he's in the middle, I mean, he's a robot right now, so the whole concept of fatigue might not really apply, but if he was like a normal human getting into a fight, and he gets beaten down to the point where he's like exhausted, like, I can't go on anymore. Whoop! I'm good now. Even bonus points if you manage to take all of that fatigue and if you could throw it at the opponent so the opponent has like the double fatigue that they had to endure, you know what I mean? Yeah. The one time we saw him reject all of the pain from somebody else, I mean, I'm assuming, considering that's what his fruit is, he could have rejected all that pain and then grabbed the bubble and, like, physically thrown it at another opponent to absorb. It's just that he did not do that in that situation because he wasn't trying to. The whole point of that scene was he's like, Kuma's like, all right, I won't take Luffy's head because you seem dead set on taking his place, but you gotta prove to me you really are gonna take his place. So that's when he creates the bubble before Zoro. He wasn't like trying to like, I'm gonna defeat you, Zoro, I'm gonna throw this bubble at you. That wasn't the point of that scene. And I think he even like does a little scoop of it. He's like, here, have a little taste. And he just throws just a little bit of it into Zoro. And it's like this little bubble that goes into him. Do you remember the scene in Yu Yu Hakusho where Yusuke inherits the spirit wave from Genkai? Where it's like this tiny little ball of light, you know, and she just puts it inside Yusuke. And Yusuke is like, is that all? You old hag. I've had mosquito bites better, you know, worse than that. Are you telling me this is oh my god, it burns every cell in my body! You know, that's the kind of thing that happened with Zoro. Just whoop. Is that supposed to... It's like electricity, like 8 million volts are running through his freaking body at once. Is 8 million volts a lot? 80 billion volts! And 600,000 amps. You don't think Zoro could take it? Then apparently you just don't know Zoro. I don't know what series you've been reading, but it isn't One Piece. So, yeah, there's that there. Okay. Now, he does have other, you know, physical attacks to, like, just, you know, attack and just damage the opponent like that. I'm only down to 2 paw pads at this point. So, this can either be done a few ways. He can do it by physically touching somebody with his paw pads, and then he could just shoot out, like, pressurized air from that one point. He did this with Frankie. Frankie, he's a cyborg who has literal, like, iron skin. It managed to damage him because the shockwave is something that literally passes right through your body. So it doesn't matter what your body's made out of. Flesh, steel, you know, if you got like an exoskeleton or something, or you're covered in armor, it doesn't matter. It just, the shockwave will literally just travel through everything in the shape of a paw pad and just, and then just, you know, knock the wind out of you. And, you know, Frankie is pretty tough dude already, but it even hurt him, you know what I mean? So he could do that. You also have his Urasasashoku. Ursasus meaning bear, which I actually already knew that before. Like, when he first used that technique, he's like, Ursasus shock. And I'm like, I know what that means! Because of Pokemon. Ursaring. That's where that came from, 100%. Anyway, Ursasus shock is when he makes a giant bubble. Alright, and that bubble, you know, the only thing it has in it is air. But that's all it needs to have. So then, he can freely control that bubble. So he can expand it, or he can compress it. So he takes a giant volume of air and slowly compresses it down. This tech takes a long time, like, because he can't, like, compress it all down in one point, so he literally has to make a giant bubble and just hope that the opponents don't do anything while he's very, very slowly compressing this bubble down. We're almost there. How you guys doing right now? I'm doing good. I had a nap earlier. I got home from work. I was kind of tired, you know what I mean? I gotta do this. I'm trying to do a Let's Play coming up later tonight, so, or maybe tomorrow, depending on how I'm feeling, so we can maybe get that started. Okay, we're good. All right, okay, here we go. So then after compressing all that air down, and then, like, to the point where it's, like, in the palms of his hands, then he releases it all at once, and all that air being released back is essentially the same as, like, a bomb going, an explosion of tremendous force. I'm sure you know, if you're a science kind of person, if you're into physics or something, you could probably calculate out, like, the megatons that would yield, depending on how much air he compressed. You know, I'm a little confused by that personally, because I was under the impression that if you take a gas, like any kind of gas, you know, it would be air and, you know, oxygen, nitrogen in this case. If you compress that to a certain point, wouldn't that turn into a solid, you know? Because I know that, like, in the center of the Earth, you have gases, but there's so much freaking ungodly pressure in the center of the Earth that the gas is just, it's a solid at that point, right? So maybe Kuma didn't compress it down enough. Maybe even taking, you know, this much air and then even just compressing it down to, like, in the palms of his hands. Like, he could keep on compressing it even more than that if he really wanted to. It's just like, this is good enough. So, yeah, it seems like it's an attack, though, that takes a while to charge. I mean, it completely depends on how much, you know, blast power he wants. If Kuma wants to only do, like, a little bit, you know, he's like, oh, okay, I'll just do this much, and then whoop, and then boom. It would still do something there, but in that case, on Thriller Bark, I mean, he had a bunch of people running around, the Straw Hats, the Thriller Bark Victims Association. He wanted to do some, like, wide range, like, destruction there, so that's why he did this. And at the same time, Kuma's a rather physically intimidating dude. You know, he's like 20 feet tall or something. You know, he's really tall, so it's not like anyone's gonna be like, hey, while he's charging that, maybe we should try to attack him. I mean, you could try. I don't know how well that would work, because once again, he's a robot. He probably could shoot a laser out of you from his, like his kneecap opens up and, like, a laser shoots you while you try to go after him, yeah. I think the worst that got that was when he used it against Oars Jr., though, or Oz Jr. You know, he's compressing all of it, and he uses it, but it doesn't get released until it's inside of Oars Jr. That's horrific. Imagine someone just shoving a bunch of TNT inside of your stomach and then boom, you know what I mean? Like, that's basically what happened with Oars. This giant amongst giants, this huge dude, and he just got dropped like that. And he wasn't killed. He was knocked out for most of the rest of the war. I think there was one more moment where he managed to get up and, like, grab Whitebeard's shift and, like, get through. But then after that, he passed out again. Wait, holy crap. Did we ever get confirmation on that? Is Oars Jr. dead? Because think about that. The war ended. He was still, like... Ace, I'm sorry. Like, he lost a leg. Doflamingo, like, threaded that shit off. So, Oars Jr. might actually be dead, because, like, Sengoku had a lot of patience with that when Shanks showed up, and Shanks is like, the war is over. You know, let me collect Whitebeard and Ace's bodies, let's all pull out, don't start any shit. It's like, well, what about the giant that lost a leg that's currently unconscious? Like, what are we gonna do with him? Like, I'm sure Shanks would have helped him out, but I don't think we ever got closure on that, is what I'm saying, you know what I mean? Okay, like, who could lift him? You know? Well, Shanks could, obviously. Yeah, he's pretty buff. Shanks just goes over, lifts up Oars Jr. with one arm, and is like, alright, we're gonna be getting out of here. Let's go, guys. Okay. But, yeah, so... The attack that I think is the most famous, though, is going back to his, he doesn't really, I don't think it has a name, actually. I think in the video games, they gave it, like, a really generic name, like, you know, like, where do you want to go? Like, he'll just say the name, and then he'll send somebody. So, Kuma is a nice guy. He's not just gonna send you flying off into the distance without asking your personal preference first. Well, okay, he did that with 8 out of the 9 Straw Hats, but he did ask Zoro where he wanted to go. I think he asked Zoro, all the other Straw Hats, he's like, I know exactly where I'm sending you. That made me think of, like, he planned out where he was gonna send every Straw Hat. Like, he's like, okay, Nami is the navigator. I'm obviously gonna send her to Weatheria, the place where they study the weather. Usopp is really into these unique, you know, different attacks and weapons and stuff. I'm gonna send him to the Bowen Archipelago. He'll get his hands on some unique weapons. You know, Luffy's going to Amazon Lily, fine. But then he's really scratching his head when he gets to Zoro. I'm like, do I send him to Wano? Nah, if I send him to... Because the whole point of that, remember, was Kuma was trying to help the Straw Hats. He was trying to get them out of there, trying to get them to escape. So I was like, well, he's a swordsman. I could send him to Wano, but that's Kaido's territory. That might not be any better. You know, the whole point of this is to send them somewhere so they can prepare for the new world. So then he asked Zoro, but Zoro never responded. So he was just like, you know what? I'm just going to send you to Mihawk's Island. You could figure something out with him. I'm sure you guys can come to a deal. Pop. So, yeah. But think about how horrific that was when that first happened, when Zoro got bubbled. We had no idea what was going to happen after that. Like, was he going somewhere where he was going to get captured, or was he dead? We don't know. That was a really scary moment when all the Straw Hats got, like, bubbled there. Also, when you are sent away by Kuma, you are yourself imprisoned in a giant, paw bubble, and you're just sent flying wherever Kuma sent you. And it doesn't matter what gets in your way. It doesn't matter if there's a mountain in the way, the bubble will just break through it. You don't have to worry about falling or anything. Food is kind of an issue, I would imagine, because, he can send you flying. For when the Straw Hats did it, it was 3 days and 3 nights. At least with Luffy, it was 3 days and 3 nights. So there's no food or water in that time. Food, you might be okay, but 3 days without water, that's getting kind of close to dehydration, So, once again, I don't think it has to be the same amount of time for everybody, but yeah, 3 days in Luffy's case. He landed on Amazon Lily and he was pretty much fine, but he's Luffy. He's kind of a superhuman there. But yeah, it doesn't matter what gets in your way. I think there was a giant Sea King that went to go attack it and is like, oh, yummy. Oh, ow, I chipped a tooth. It'll just keep flying until it hits it. So that's pretty cool there. Also, another aspect about the fruit that I thought about going back into that, compressing gas and everything down. If Kuma really wanted to, if he can keep those bubbles, without popping wherever he went, he could take like Caesar's gas weapon, like the Shirokuni. He could take a bunch of that gas, compress it down into his ball, and maybe, I don't know, compress it down super, super tiny to the point where he could keep it on him, and then he could release it or something. I don't know. Just an idea. But then again, Kuma doesn't really need to, because the Pawpaw fruit is not his main go-to with physical combat, because he's got the Pacifista upgrade. So, considering now he's a PX0, he doesn't really have any will of his own anymore. I like to think that Vegapunk probably programmed, some, sleeping subroutine into his feature, so he'll eventually awaken his memories in some way. But he's a robot now. He doesn't really have any drive or motivation to improve, so he's probably not going to work on his devil fruit anymore, or having to awaken it or anything, because he just lacks the faculties to do that, right? But yeah, he could still, it's still programmed, into his brain how to use his fruit. It's just that mostly it's just attacking opponent using lasers. If the PX0 ever faced off against an opponent that was too strong for him to deal with, I'm sure it'd be probability of victory 2%, emergency evacuation protocol, boop, and then sends him flying off into the opposite direction. So, in terms of travel, he doesn't need a ship, he doesn't need a plane or a submarine or anything. He can pretty much go anywhere in the world he wants at any time. Once again, he's a robot right now, so it's not like he has any will of his own, I think I'm gonna go to Vacation Island and have a margarita. He can't do that now, which is kind of upsetting, but he does have a very useful fruit, and Kuma, or the PX0, could, in theory, show up pretty much anywhere in the series, and it would make perfect sense. He could pop in Wano. I don't think he will, but he could, and it would make perfect sense. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to go pick up the paw pads. Also, make sure to check out my Teespring store for the new Tekking101 Jolly Roger hoodies and shirts, and the Geography is Everything. We got the hoodies available in that now, too. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tekking, signing out. Hold on, let me get my... I have extra paw pads. See, when you sell these things, you gotta make sure to have, a starter kit. You gotta have, extra paw pads and everything. I think Kuma had 4, but, my hands are not as big, so I only have 3. But, yeah, okay. Alright. Here we go. Signing out.